Hey, Peter.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy. Good to see you.
Yeah,
I
good
like
to see
your
you.
Mikeller pullover.
So this is like a fun experiment.
Yep.
We just said, let's see if we just record ourselves talking about what we got up to this week and see where it goes.
Yeah. Let's do that. We can jump right in the middle of it. You wrote this week. You actually, I think it was yesterday. You published an important article about product and engineering. Who owns what?
Mm,
I really liked it because I mean, no offense, I don't think it was revolutionary.
no.
I really liked it because it did a very good summary of how I think about these topics. And yeah, I guess we can jump into it. Maybe you can summarize it very
Mhm.
briefly for those who didn't read it yet. And then I have some questions, comments that we can discuss.
Yeah. Yeah. I should give some history of this article because I've
Okay.
actually used it in, I guess, a few different places that I've worked now. And I think the origin of it was when I became CTO of TravelDo, and I was trying to be, paired up with the chief product officer, who was a great guy. I was trying to figure out, like, well, where's the line, and like, how do we draw the line? How do we fit together? Because I could see that it was disjointed in the organization below us. And it wasn't just a matter of us having joint meetings, joint staff meetings, and things like that. And there was actually some kind of clarity that was needed between ourselves. And maybe for some people, it's super obvious what product owns and what engineering owns, but I found it wasn't. And um, and so I stumbled across a number of articles. I've linked to all of them in my blog post. But essentially, the one from Segment resonated a lot with me. And what Segment basically say is, and I really love their framing of it. I mean, there's others as well that are from the Silicon Valley product group, which are linked as well. But I found the simplicity of this, and it was like principles behind it. So
Hmm.
product is really owning the why and the what, and engineering owns the who and the how and the when. Um, and obviously, those are like kind of directional guidelines, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuance to using that properly. But what I've found is when you can kind of just at a very high level say, hey, this is what I'm responsible for, what you're responsible for. I think that really helps in a lot of situations.
Mm.
And I've seen it and now in three different companies where just providing this kind of clarity has really helped the organization work a lot better together. So yeah, that's why. And frankly, a lot of the content from this article is taken from the segment. I didn't try and change the
Hmm.
examples. I thought they did a great job. I did provide some extra context where I've seen things go
Yeah.
wrong.
Hmm.
The hyper complicated racy matrix that people can
Yeah.
produce and all of those things. But yeah, that's basically what I've written. And I know you had some questions for me about it, but
Yeah,
that's
well,
that's the
so
article.
basically to summarize, what you're saying is that there are these 5 questions
Mm,
on software engineering or product development, because as you say,
mm,
we are all working towards building a product. The why and the what, that's owned by product, and the how, who, and when,
hmm
that's owned by engineering. So I have a few questions. I'm going to jump
hmm
into maybe the one that's I think it's very tricky to grasp in this. Like I think we agree that ownership works the best if there is a single-handed ownership. Like
mm,
you're responsible for this, you're responsible for that, and that's what you're giving in the article. But when you go into the details, you mentioned that there's a need to collaborate. Yeah, and I totally agree with you. This framework shouldn't be used like sitting back and saying, okay, you're responsible for the what we are building. Tell me what we are building, and then I will build it,
mm.
and we are done. So how do you resolve this dilemma of single ownership versus need to collaborate?
Yeah, this is so,
Or you don't see it as a dilemma?
no. So actually, and this is interesting. If you go to the segment article, they talk
Okay.
that none of this will work without a foundation of trust and
Yeah, you
psychological
mentioned that
safety.
also. Yeah. Hmm.
And I also mentioned that in the article that I have another article about the foundational principles for teams, which is based on the ideas from the 5 dysfunctions of a team book. And you need those foundations. So that's just for collaboration to happen. So that's the one bit. I think like, um, I think, let me try and, in some ways, each of these is who the buck stops with, right?
Hmm.
Who gets to make the final decision?
Hmm.
And I'm just searching for a kind of, there's an article that I wanted to share, and I'll probably share it in the notes.
Sure.
Basically, I'm not really a fan of a racy matrix
Hmm.
approach, but I think you could go with something called the DAISY matrix, which is, I'm just looking for all the terms, but uh, who's the kind of the driver, the approver, the contributors, and who needs to be informed,
Okay.
and I think that's a kind of more of a slightly different approach to these. It's like usually you've got sort of a driver, approver slash decision taker. People contribute and people need to be informed. And I think there's an approach like that around these, which is um, everyone needs to contribute to the discussion
Hmm.
around how we build something. But ultimately, if product is saying we need to take something that's going to break the product long term, and engineering gets to take the call and say, no, we're going to do it this way.
Hmm.
Um, Now, healthy organizations review those decisions and they say, what
Hmm.
can we learn from our past decisions? And healthy organizations also record their decisions so they can review them
It's easier.
and do
Yeah.
those kind of no blame retrospectives on our
Yeah.
previous decisions. So it's all part of a healthy system. And as I wrote in the article, if it's starting to go wrong, it's not the guidelines, it's the people and how they're
Hmm.
working. I don't know like how to describe that, but like, because it's so interrelated between these,
Hmm.
um, Silicon Valley Product Group talks about product owning the value and viability as a different kind of approach, but I think it's very
Hmm.
similar to the why and the what.
Yeah. 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 I agree. I guess I see it. You can see it when a team is working really well. You can tell that there is a very strong and very good relationship between the PM and the EM. They
Mhm,
always have each other's back. They might argue
mhm,
about a lot of stuff, but they fight it out, and then both can represent the decision
mhm,
at the end. So maybe this is the key. Like there is no need to define a single point of ownership
mhm.
because they all trust and rely on each other.
There's something that you said there that made me think about another thing that I think is really important here. They complete each other's sentences in a way between product
Mm.
and engineering, and that means to me that they do understand each other's jobs. And
Oh yeah, that's important.
I think like if you
Mm.
think about this
Mm.
concept of like I-shaped people who are super specialized in just one area versus T-shaped people who are hyper specialized, but they also have this broad range of skills. And then there's also this concept of M-shaped people who can actually have like a couple different
Mhm.
specialties with a broad in between. And I think you want to get to the place where product can, uh, in some ways, kind of cover for engineering in periods of
Mhm.
holidays and absences. People go on leaves
That's a
and
good
so on,
point. Yeah,
and vice
yeah.
versa. And I think that would be the most. And by the way, this is the same in tech. Like this is why I really don't like the separation of front end and back end and working
Mm.
separately. I love it when front end and back
DevOps.
end pair and work together, and then they can may not have the same depth of skill in each other's areas, but they're able to
Mm.
cross over. So I think it's the same as kind of like a good front end back end pairing together on a product,
Mhm.
maybe working in each other's bits, not getting in standing on each other's toes, but complementing each other.
Mhm. Mhm. That's a good answer, I think. Yeah, and I think it leads to one of my realizations. I don't think the smallest unit of execution is a person. I think it's a team.
Yes.
Like you cannot break this down.
Mhm.
Because once you break it down, you start going into us versus them, me versus the others, etc. If you can embrace this culture of the single unit is a team, then there is no question
Mhm.
who within the team takes responsibility because it's naturally shared.
Exactly. And ultimately I love it the way you express that, because the kind of the why, what, how, who, and when is overall owned by the team. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. But then we can just abstract to say like the team is responsible for everything, and then we didn't say anything.
no,
But
no, but
yeah,
ultimately that's why you have roles in the team. We each have our
yeah,
different roles
exactly,
to play,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
the best is where we know our own roles, but we understand the roles of others too, and we can sometimes like you know pair, mob, and even sometimes stand in for them across the team, and that's I think like for example another part of a healthy team is that you can rotate who's facilitating the rituals in the team. It's not just
hmm,
one person that's constantly doing it, and that requires a kind of like a cross skilling. And the best cross functional teams, they become cross skilled in each other's jobs. They're never able to maybe necessarily do the best at what each other do, but they cross skill.
yeah. Yeah, but I like your idea of saying that the PM can stand in for the
Mm,
EM if they're on a 1 week, 2 week vacation. I could see it working in
mm,
well working teams that the PM was giving engineering updates,
mhm,
and obviously it wouldn't scale for doing it indefinitely,
mhm.
but for a step in, it works well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I have another one, but I think we almost answered this. But this comes up often, I think, in a lot of companies and teams that if the why and what are owned by product, then how do we get engineering heavy work done, like migration, stack depth, updates, upgrades? When all this stuff that don't have a obviously visible product value.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think engineering still own the how, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so you can easily put in place, and we've done this together in the past. We have a principle in place that says, like, talk about a migration that needs to happen, right? Uh, we can have a principle that says when we touch a page that has tech debt, and we know that there's technologies in there that are not part of our golden path, then we take extra time to update it, and the kind of the when and the how are impacted by
Yeah,
that principle. So
yeah,
I think you can still apply that. There's a bit of this also, which is ultimately there's all the kind of little things. I do think you kind of need to balance the mix of work that a team does,
mm,
um, and frankly, the best product managers they give some of that mix of work to, let's say, in a good working team, the product manager is giving part of that time allocation to engineering for those things. In a really, really good working team, the product manager understands those challenges and themselves prioritizes it as part of the what.
yeah,
And the best situations I've seen are where product deeply understand also the challenges around tech debt, and they go outside of the team to represent that to the stakeholders
hmm,
with the engineering manager. And they plant the flag and say, actually, can't do features right now. We need to do this, and here's why.
hmm.
And they're often better at doing that than engineering. So in terms,
Yeah, yeah, because they are naturally good advocates for product features, and I think
yeah,
it's important that you touched on that. Tech debt doesn't exist in a vacuum. Tech
mhm,
debt has consequences on the product, and that's why it becomes important to address.
mhm,
We don't migrate because there is a shiny new platform that we want to play with. We
yeah,
migrate because we want to increase our confidence in quality, the speed of the software, scalability, whatever. Like if we can frame tech debt and all these migrations and everything, the
mhm,
engineering heavy tasks from a product point of view, what is the product value that we
mhm,
bring on the long term, then the PM can much easier advocate for it and fight out the bandwidth.
exactly. And this is, I think, why if a PM understands developer productivity, for example,
Hmm.
and they're often like I really the best teams for me are where the PM or designer and engineers are pairing together doing stuff. And the PM may not all understand everything, but if they see like a lot of sharp edges in the dev experience too, um, that might be a little bit harder. But maybe something more visible would be the manual interventions the team need to do for, let's say, recently I saw an example where when a customer wants to enable a single sign-on for their account, there was a manual activity that engineering need to do on the database. That's the kind of thing where they can say, "Oh, well, we have this amount of interruptions every month on this thing. Let's make that a feature in the product." Right? that's a tech debt type thing. It's also related to feature, but there's lots of examples like that, like are related to bugs or whatever, where
Mhm.
product can still understand the context of engineering and prioritize those things that may not, with all the pressure that comes from the business, may not
Mm.
be the highest priority, but it's an investment and I think that's part of the really hard challenge of being a product manager is just constantly balancing all of those concerns across
Yeah.
stakeholders inside the team and outside, and being able to make wise choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Because oftentimes it's not the choice is not between a good and a bad thing. The choice is between multiple very good
Yeah,
ideas, and it's really hard to choose which one has the biggest impact at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So healthy conversations. Ultimately, all of this works when teams have good, healthy conversations,
Mm.
and the process and the way they do it, things surfaces those in the right way. And where they're not having good conversations, they're making bad decisions. And
Mm.
yeah.
I'm afraid that we might get a bit off topic, but it's really interesting that how would you how would you transform a team to have these healthy conversations, especially in a remote setting
Mm,
when all these natural opportunities of going out for a lunch and everything are not existing? And I know it's a whole
mm.
different topic on itself, how to build trust and everything. Just
Well, you said it. It's how to build trust.
yeah.
That's what I think it is. It's building trust. Even when teams are remote, or I prefer the term distributed, um,
Mm.
you've got to get together for FaceTime, and
Hmm.
um, that frequency is different for different teams. But I recommend um, at least once a quarter if you can. But I think 6 monthly is kind of the upper limit.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I think that so I mean, ultimately, you it's just such an accelerant for building trust. I don't. I mean, of course, you can build trust in a virtual setting, but um, it's look at our most of the time, Peter, we've worked remote or
Yeah.
remotely, but all of those moments that we had together, having lunch or dinner
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
walking around the
Yeah.
city together, they
Yeah.
were the moments that build this kind of
Oh yeah,
friendship.
totally. Yeah,
You know.
I totally agree, and I saw it working also with my teams
Mm,
that the level of relationship, the efficiency
mm,
of the relationship also is just so much better after
mhm,
just sharing a day
mm.
physically. And okay, I'm gonna back out of this street because I think it's a whole different topic, and maybe we can talk about it another time deeper. How to build teams in a distributed setting. Um, yeah, let me get back to the article, but I think it's a good answer to
Well,
to build trust in the team.
well, you've been very busy this week as well, Peter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. You want to get out of the spotlight? I still have some comments and questions.
Oh, well,
But
if we could do some rapid fire stuff, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. This is going to be a quick comment,
Mm,
but I think it's important because you mentioned at one point that engineering will require product to weigh in on relative importance of speed versus cost.
mm.
And I totally agree with it. I think you just missed one aspect because I think it's a triangle: it's speed, cost, and quality.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and and I think it's very important that to realize that you have sometimes you have very good reasons to compromise on quality if you want to move to the speed direction. It should be temporary. You
Mm,
cannot build a company on that, but maybe. And I think this kind of compromise, they often happen. Like
mm,
you can do whatever you want. They often happen. But if you make them explicit and document them, like you said, document your decisions. If you document that, okay, next quarter we are making a compromise on quality
mm,
because we want to do this, this, and this. And that's why we believe we're going to be faster and we're going to be
mhm.
cheaper, maybe. And once you have this running document, then half a year later, you can say, okay, now we need to set the balance back to quality. So just a small comment. I
Yeah.
think that it's a triangle. It's not a
Oh, yeah. In fact,
scale.
I think there's two
Or
bits.
or maybe there's a fourth
Well,
quadrant that I'm missing.
no, but there's two bits to it. Well, there is a fourth one, which is you could add people to the project, but that rarely works if you are midway. But
I think it's
it
yeah,
can work
yeah.
in certain projects up front. But
I see it as
yeah,
a part of cost because
mm,
if you add people, it means
yeah,
you add money to the problem.
yeah. But I would say, like, I think the inherent belief in there is that quality is the one thing you set a bar as a team, and then you don't compromise. But you're right. I think there's almost a whole article to be written about how and when and how to handle the trade-off of where you do compromise on quality.
Yeah.
But it can't be part of your day-to-day. It's a break glass moment for me. There's just so much you pay for later. And I have rarely seen an organization compromise on quality and then go back in 6 months and actually fix the quality of the code. They just end up having a creaking code base with
Yeah.
a lot of tech debt, and then they decide they're going to do some horrible rewrite, and it's
But let me be a devil's advocate for a second. Like, I haven't seen it working very well either,
mhm,
to be granted. But my assumption is that if those, like, whatever I saw, usually these were realization in hindsight that, oh, we made a compromise on quality, and rarely an explicit conscious
mhm,
decision. That's one of my points. And the second point is, if you think about it, an MVP, an experiment, is a compromise on quality. You're not building an MVP
mhm,
to be very solid and scalable
mhm,
and resilient and everything. So in a way, we saw it working. Like if a team makes an experiment to try out something, they don't care about quality that much.
mm.
The thing where it can break is that once leadership and stakeholders see it working, it's really hard to explain that it's not done. We need to go back now and
I think
do
you
it
and
in
I
a
have
better
seen that
quality.
in a case where there was a really cool
I've
feature
seen it
built.
multiple times.
Yeah, a really cool feature that was
Oh
super
yeah.
important
Oh
for
yeah.
the business, that was built in a hackathon, that looked like it
Oh
worked,
yeah. I got them.
that
Yeah.
just produced something like, and everyone was like, "Let's ship it now," and including me, I wanted to ship stuff like that
Oh
too.
yeah.
And then the team were like, "No way, no way! This is like really dirty under the covers. I hacked everything, and it's a 3-month project to actually make this ship to the customer."
Okay. So I guess what I can say is conscious decision
Yeah.
and discipline and just keep documenting your decisions. So
Documenting
yeah.
decisions and then being able to refer back to it is really helpful. I will say I've seen a lot of situations where you say that they're not like, sometimes as senior leaders in an organization, we think like, you know, everyone's on board. But if you go and talk to sometimes the individual engineers, they'll say, "No, I'm really not happy about this decision. I don't like to compromise." And if you do that too many times, it can accumulate, and it can be one of those
Mhm.
kind of like pain points that causes people to churn in an organization, because
Yeah.
they start hating the code base, and they find it harder and harder to work in, and the constant compromises that they're being asked to make.
Yeah. But I mean, it shows
Mm,
like these kind of organizations are going to have problems with quality, which can
yeah.
manifest in incidents, in bugs,
Hmm.
in unexplainably long development
Hmm.
times because just the code is a mess and nobody dares to touch areas,
Exactly.
afraid of breaking what seems to be working. Yeah.
And I said something earlier. I said about this is all about healthy conversations.
Mm,
When the product and engineering manager, often who deal with external stakeholders, hide those conversations they had in the team, that
mm.
means we're not having a healthy conversation externally as well. And so it's important to surface that, you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that it leads. This is also a very big topic. Like
Mm.
it's about building a culture where failure is embraced and we can focus on the learning aspect and all the transparency questions.
The baseline.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Without that,
exactly.
you know, the
But you're
every
right. If it doesn't exist,
Mm,
then naturally PMs and EMs are hiding those
mhm,
problems and because they want to
mm,
seem they are incentivized to hide those problems.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Cool. Last one, maybe. How does it look like on the CTO CPO level? Like
yeah,
I see how this is working, but I can see two directions. One is a bit more top down, where
mm,
the CPO and CTO set direction that the teams interpret and find solutions and experiments to the problems on their level, or more bottom up, like
mm,
the team's own areas, and they just find out what they can do to improve those areas.
mm.
And we just hope it's gonna get to a coherent product strategy.
Yeah. I think the answer is it needs to be both.
Hmm.
I would, I think I would recommend people listen to the Lenny's podcast episode where he interviews Boz, who's the CTO of Meta.
Okay.
talks about how Mark Zuckerberg kind of runs engineering. And what I think is really interesting about it is there's a clear intent being shared from the high level. And I think I would use that word. And I like the term intent-based leadership, which comes from,
Yeah.
my head's going blank.
David Marquet.
Uh, David Marquet
No.
talks about it a lot, but it also comes from The Art of Action, which is where I think also that phrase has kind of been, or it's one of the original books that
Mm.
inspired Spotify and so on. Um, in the sense that I do think that leadership needs to provide the intent of like, we need to go over there. And then the how is often resolved and answered by the teams. And so in a healthy
Hmm.
situation, team, I think it's both. And I think there's a healthy conversation going up and down where instead of leadership saying, wow, I said we should go over there. And what are you doing this for? Do this other
But it's
thing.
such a cool feature.
Exactly. Do this other
Yeah.
thing, impose themselves. It's, wow, there's a gap of knowledge here. I don't understand. Why are you doing that when the when the intent of the organization is this thing that seems totally different?
Hmm.
Understanding why there's a gap, and then also understanding why there might be an organizational communication and process gap that resulted in this kind of wrong behavior. And so I think that leaders should be, so in the CTO, CPO level, like going down, I think that's intent setting. And the CPO is providing that intent around the why and the what around the sort of the broader context of the market and what the company is trying to do. And they're often thinking at a strategic level. And the CTO has to think about that from the technology underpinning it, technology
Hmm.
roadmap, the technology, like also putting, and both of them need to put in place like the right working system to make that function. So their job is a lot to do with the system of work as well.
Hmm.
As well, and that's how I think about it.
Yeah, no, I like this idea of setting the broad
Mhm,
direction. And I think it's very important, all those discussions, that everyone, not just the
mhm,
PMs and EMs, but even the engineering and other, or like
mhm,
line workers are familiar
mhm,
with like, yeah, we want to discover India.
mhm,
And now every little team figures out what can they do on their own
mhm.
scope to get us closer to this North Star. And yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
and
mean,
I guess there a lot of discussions. This setting intent down, setting the direction down, teams coming up with ideas, validating those ideas, and yeah.
exactly. And your process needs to have this ability to have a briefing from the top, and then have the back briefing coming back up, which says,
Hmm.
based on what I understand and what you shared, here's my intent also to do this thing, and then have a conversation up and down about what that, and then people can kind of autonomously execute. Um,
Yeah,
and and I think that's what I like about the Boz interview in Lenny's podcast is he he talks about how ultimately teams are able to kind of Mark Zuckerberg is heavily involved in the details of the
yeah,
organization and the features, especially around VR and what they're doing there. But it's I don't know how to describe it, but there's definitely there's the ability for people to be autonomous. Facebook is one of the most autonomous organizations
mm,
as well.
hmm.
So it's an interesting study.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, I think it's a very good summary article. I really like that
Mhm.
it's very concise and gives a very good starting point to how to set up a healthy team and collaboration between product and engineering.
Maybe just the last point on this article,
Sure.
and this is born out of articulating this inside organizations that I've worked in and having to articulate it.
Yeah.
And I think there is value in not just going, oh, nice article, but as an organization, articulating your principles in your words for your
Mm,
context. It might not be this. Maybe there's a different mental model that works better for your organization, but putting something in writing in place that you can iterate around, if you have like an RFC and decision record
yeah.
process that you can iterate on, but really have it as your um, kind of like documented way of working.
Yeah,
Um,
I know. I'm a big fan of that also. What I find is that it helps having the arguments and discussions to be made early
mhm.
and reach a conclusion and not having to decide in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And also it takes away all kind of assumptions. Like once it's written out, then somebody go, oh wait, but I don't think it like that. I always thought you you have a different
Mhm.
idea. Let's discuss why do you think that's the best way of doing it. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm a big fan of writing.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
So Peter, you have had a busy week then.
Oh yeah, yeah. I start. It's a pattern. I have an idea and I start to write about it, and then it just grows and grows and grows, and I sometimes I struggle to stop it. So I wrote about the title of the article is how to prepare for an engineering manager role, and the idea was that oftentimes there are skilled software engineers, developers who are motivated to get into engineering
Mhm.
management. Um, I'm looking for my words carefully because there is a black pattern. There is something that I really don't like when either companies push high performing developers into a
Mhm.
management role, or they don't have the career possibilities on a technical path to have just strictly technical leadership and advance as a staff or principal or whatever engineer. So I think it's very important to have the motivation within the individual to
Mm.
go down this path. And I had some tongue-in-cheek articles about good signs and bad signs if somebody is I think has the right motivations to be an engineering manager or not. But while somebody's clear in those motivations, I wanted to find some like the situation is typically that okay, I want to be a manager, but how do I get this done? Like that I cannot just sign up and do this. Some companies have great
Yeah.
experiment engineering manager programs that create a explicitly safe place to experiment with this and at the end of the experiment make a decision. But oftentimes that's not granted. And I
I think
wanted to
it's
find,
quite rare, in
yeah,
fact, for
yeah, probably. I mean, arguably the climate is different
Mhm.
than 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Like, maybe we can talk a bit about that also later
Mhm.
about wartime and peacetime, but I think we are in a very different time than we used to be. And I can understand why companies are not investing
Mhm.
into experimental engineering manager problems nowadays. But anyway, my point was that here's the developer. They want to be a manager. They cannot be promoted, and but they have some resources and time and everything to work on this. What can they do in their current software engineer roles? What kind of
Mhm.
activities or experiments they could do to prepare for a new actual engineering management career? And first of all, I didn't want this to be a random list. So as I was picking up things like I don't know, start a blog or go on a conference,
Mhm.
all kind of small ideas. I wanted to create a structure,
Mhm.
like what kind of skills are these activities building? And then it led me to thinking, okay, so what are the skills necessary for an engineering manager? What do you need to be good at to
Mhm.
be good at engineering management? So I identified 5 areas: leadership and people, communication, strategy and project management. It's a big umbrella. Technical confidence and managing yourself.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think these 5 areas, more or less, like this emerged from the bottom up, like a lot of ideas, and then I also used a little bit of AI help to
Oh,
structurize
yeah.
this and create categories, and obviously the first result was not good, but it helped me. So maybe there are better
Mm.
categorizations and better lists, but I found it useful. So I took these 5 areas and I tried to list
Mm.
activities that I see could help someone grow in
Mm.
these particular areas. The most challenging was interestingly the technical contribution, technical familiarity. I think I say something like technical confidence is needed for an engineering manager, but the chapter title was something like rebalance your technical contributions, because I think this is a very unique area where
Yeah.
rebalancing
Because I think your
is
article is
key.
written for an engineer going into
Yeah,
engineer manager roles, so it's
exactly.
more
Yeah.
about how they whereas what this wasn't written for is someone who maybe coming from a slightly different part of the org.
Oh yeah, you're totally
Um,
right. I didn't
yeah,
think about that aspect. Yeah,
yeah,
that was not the point. Yeah, yeah. This is strictly for engineers then, and those are my ideas here. I mean, I'm trying to be explicit also
mhm,
that I think one of the big traps for an engineer becoming engineering manager is that when there are turbulent times
mhm,
and challenges and everything, they just pull back to whatever they are comfortable with, and that's coding, and
mhm,
that's going to the code, and it's a big trap because they provide value. It probably there's a good chance they are one of the most experienced engineers on the
mhm,
team. They can do something quicker and in a better quality than some people on their teams, but it means that they are not focusing their efforts on the areas where on the long term they can multiply the impact, and this is why it's a trap, and that's why I think they need to rebalance these technical
mhm.
contributions to be an efficient and effective engineering manager.
Yeah, I really liked how you framed that actually. It's it's a focus on the people elements of the technical contribution, and I really like that.
Hmm.
There's one thing I thought about when I read your article. There's a great book called The People Pipeline, and we're gonna have to do some show notes for this, I think, to link out
Yeah, probably.
to,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
different things.
Okay, so I'm not gonna take notes now. We can
But
read it.
one of the things about it was in one of the concept of this pipeline was that the first step in your career is managing yourself,
Mhm,
and then the step after that is managing others. And it's
mhm.
interesting for me that you included self management as one of the areas because it's almost like if someone's not managing themselves, I don't think they should even be thinking about. My thought process was, I don't think you should even think about being a manager because it's going to be 10 times worse when you're in the vortex of
Yep.
meetings and everything else. You're going to
Mhm.
be set up for failure. And so it's almost like self management is prerequisite to going anywhere in your career. In fact, going anywhere as an IC leadership too.
Oh yeah,
So it was
yeah.
just how
That's
I thought
that's
about it. I was
fair.
like, oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah. That's a good point. I mean, yeah, I really like how you say very strongly that you need to take care of yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, on the airplanes, you need to put on your mask first and then help others. Um,
In fact,
yeah,
if someone doesn't have self-management, I don't think they're gonna be able to do the things on this list.
yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, there is one of the ideas that I have is that to start a self-reflection practice, like journaling or,
Yeah.
or, or like documenting your decisions. And I think this is super valuable for any kind of career. And it's really a differentiator. There are just so many people who are just instinctively moving on whatever they do without any self-reflection. And,
Mhm.
and yeah, that can make a big difference in an IC career also. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's a long list, and I know that
A super long
you
list.
wrote about
Yeah.
the struggles of doing it. Personally, I love this article. I felt like it was the right length because it's kind of definitive. Like
Mm,
there's a lot of different areas. There's some great examples that you have in here. Um, And frankly, if you're seeing this also, I love your view because you're seeing it as a manager of managers,
mhm,
and it's like if an IC has done, ticked a few of these things in the different categories you have, you'll much more. It's much easier to support, their transition to a trial as an engineering manager, right? So,
yeah. Yeah.
um, it's almost like giving the kind of like the view that they need to this is for them, but in some ways they also need to be able to say, I look at, here's why I'm ready for this role. So I love
Exactly.
it. I
Yeah.
love
That's
this article.
that's a very good point. One of the advice that I give is to have even in the very beginning of the journey to do a self-assessment about uh, the easiest is if somebody has
Mhm,
a long-term career in the company, just take their career ladder expectations, if they have one, ideally they do,
mhm,
for the engineering manager, and just do an honest check-in with the help of their manager,
yeah,
if it's possible, to where am I on this scale. And this is going to be super useful if 3 months later, half a year later, the person repeats this exercise,
Mhm.
and the progress is visible. It, that that's a
Mhm.
gold promotion package. Like
Exactly.
it, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Um, for someone that's kind of reading it and they're kind of maybe a little bit overwhelmed by the list,
It is
uh,
super overwhelming, and I'm sorry
th-
about that. Like,
how would you?
this is why,
Where do they
yeah. Go on.
start? Where do they start?
I think it makes sense to just go through the list quickly and just take a little exclamation mark or checkbox on our ideas that they resonate with
Mhm.
them. Because I don't think you can approach it as a like a recipe in a cookbook that you have
Mhm.
to go from step by step, and at the end of the process you have an engineering manager cook. You need to find what resonates
Mhm.
well with you, what opportunities are ready. Maybe the company has a hackathon
Mhm.
coming up. So I mentioned hackathons, and that can be valuable in some good ways of approaching it. They can build some skills about I don't know, trying out different functions, etc. It's just an example.
Mhm.
So whatever resonates, whatever their opportunities, or have a little short list and just experiment with it. That's I think a good approach with the article. And if someone's really motivated to do this and they have their
Mhm.
motivations at the right place, I would start with a
Mhm.
self-assessment, and maybe one of the most important things is on this is to have a regular documented journey. Like
Mhm.
have a just focus on one little thing that you want to try this week, and at the end of the week, just to look back. Did you
Yeah.
achieve what you wanted? What did you learn from it? You failed. Why did you fail? That's even better.
Mhm.
I love a good failure. What did you learn from it? Why? What would you do different next time to make it a success?
Mhm.
And just progress like this.
One of the things that I'm taking away when you say that is almost start with the self-assessment bit that you talk about, and then um, put in place basically almost everything you have in the managing yourself section. um,
Maybe that's a good starting point. You're right.
because in managing yourself, you talk about self-reflection, goals, you know,
Even time
time
management.
management,
Yeah,
yeah, support network. It's kind of like the foundation to, yeah, it's
you're
interesting.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe that should have been the first category.
Well, I like that you did the self-assessment. I think that's an
Mm,
important bit. Like, just take stock. Don't try and put a system in place. Like, just take stock first, and then
mm.
say, "Do I have a good system? What can I improve?
That's a good
Improve your
point.
system,
Yeah,
and then tackle with your goals process these other
yeah.
elements."
I really like this aspect that you mentioned, because I see it often that people who are frustrated about their time management, task management, they just take a big framework
Mm.
that they jump headfirst into it, buy a software that promises task management being solved, etc.
Story of my life,
And
Peter.
yes, but obviously mine also, but there are a few things that help me realize, like have a more healthier approach to
Mm,
this. First, this is a cliche, but obviously everybody's needs are different. No ready-made framework
mm,
is helping someone. You need to adapt to your own needs. And this first, you need to regularly look back on your
mm,
processes and see what worked and what didn't work,
mm,
and adapt accordingly. And second, this huge realization is that there is you need to get comfortable with the fact that so many things are not going to
mm,
get done that are good things, would be valuable things for you or your company or in your career.
mm,
Personally, you would love to do it, and they are not going to get
mm,
done because you just have finite amount of time. And you can be so much more efficient if you focus on one or two things and get them to a completion or milestone than scattering your attention around in a
yeah,
million stuff.
yeah. That's like a power law for everything, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I really like this example in the 4,000 Weeks book.
Mm,
I wrote a book review about it a few weeks ago, and I'm drawing a blank. I don't remember who, some big investor guy, whatever. He was flying on a jet with a private pilot and asked what are the, I don't know, organized in a ordered list of one of your life goals, something like this. The pilot did it. And the story goes that, okay, now select the first 5 that are most important for you and focus on those, etc. But the rest 15 ones, naturally you would think that, okay, those are my backlog. Like
Mm-mm,
those are the ones that I should, if I have a little time, focus on
mm-mm,
that or work a bit progress. No, the point is that those 15 items are your biggest threat. You need
mm,
to make sure that you're not concentrating on that at all. You make a conscious effort to putting them aside because you need to focus on the 5. And if you got done with the 5 or some, then maybe you can implement those. But this mind shift change, that things that I'm truly motivated
mm.
about, things that can be very valuable, I need to learn to put them aside and say no to. That was very valuable for me. And I think it can apply to this
I'm
topic
laughing because I
also.
think like you and I might talk about a little bit about some of our adventures with home labs a little bit later on, but
We can talk about
maybe
that
my home
also,
lab
yeah.
is part of that 15 things I shouldn't be doing.
Oh yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
mean, I think it's all about conscious decision.
yeah.
Like
Mm,
you should be the one deciding what's the 5 thing and what are the 15
mm,
things, and not just, coincidences and other people and circumstances.
yeah.
Like if you can decide, sit down, make this
Mhm,
list and say, okay, I don't know, I love biking, I love home labbing.
mm,
I need to make a choice because I only have one spot left in the 5, and
mhm.
then just focus on that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And probably home labbing does make it, given the time I've spent over the last more than 10 years doing it, it's probably a passion. We can talk more
Do you
about
think
that.
it would make your top 5 list?
As long as like the top 5 can, it assumes that I'm spending time on my family and so on. Um,
Yeah, I guess it's easy to feel the 5 if you include those kind of
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Maybe it should be outside of those. Yeah.
yeah. But I've just learned so much from it. So yeah, I've always been a geek, Peter, and it's hard for me to
Mm.
let go of that. I think that's the bit that it's where I can still have some like geekery and fun, keep hands on, keep relevant.
Yeah.
It's helped me loads in my career. So
Mm.
I have to say it probably would be
Yeah.
in the top
Oh,
5.
you embrace it then.
Yeah, maybe I should stop
It's
playing games and video games though. Or it's like that won't make the top 5, I can tell you.
Yeah, yeah, but like, what is the role of video games in someone's life?
Mhm.
It's to relax
Exactly.
and
Yeah,
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 yeah.
just not too
Like,
much.
I mean, you cannot have you shouldn't have a 16-hour of efficiency
No.
during the day without any rest or
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, any other thoughts on? I did want to say like I've really enjoyed your recent articles. I think you've written some what I would call like bangers, like things that are I would say uh, cornerstone blog posts. I think this one that we just talked about is
Mm.
a cornerstone blog post. I think how to represent decisions you disagree with, which is your
That
post
was a
from
good one.
last
Yeah.
week, superb. Perhaps also born out of some personal experiences.
Yeah, you can talk about it. I mean, I had my fair share of having to
Yeah.
represent decisions I disagree with, or just, bad circumstances.
Hmm.
The article is a bit
Hmm.
wishy-washy because I don't make it super clear. Sometimes it's not a decision. Sometimes it's I don't know. The company goes broke. Who
Hmm.
decided that? A lot of people probably, but none of that I can do anything about. But the point is that I need to, as a leader or manager of teams, I need to step out and explain the
Hmm.
situation and take the best out of it and help people process the unfortunate events.
Yeah, and the other one that I think, well, there's a couple more, but I think how to deal with negative behavior is another
Mm.
superb
Thank
article
you.
that you wrote on. I mean, we not have enough time to go into those, but they are great posts that you've done in the last month. I think you've been on quite a roll. I was curious about your process. Like, how are you able to manage yourself? I'm struggling a little bit with it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I also like, for example, my post, I had it written on Monday, but I shipped it on Saturday, and I think I'm trying to gravitate towards shipping on a Friday. But
Mm.
um, honestly, like Yeah, it's the I don't I
Can I quickly ask back before answering your question? Like, what did you do between Monday and Friday?
mm, so Monday,
I mean,
we have
not
we
no,
have
sorry, no, don't
no, no,
misunderstand
no.
me. What changed in the article between when you said I had the article
Yeah.
on Monday,
So
yet you didn't publish? Because yeah, go on, and then I can
we've
explain why is it a trap for me. Yeah,
Yeah, so first of all, like I've been doing a fractional role, so part of my week is just taken up with that
that's not my point.
and
Yeah, yeah,
family stuff. But I think that I agonized over the
that's my point.
the section at the end
Mm-hmm.
of where it all goes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized, we talked about it. It's not like, oh, I own these bits and you own those bits. It's the
Yeah,
interrelatedness, and I tried to.
yeah.
It was expressing that in the article, honestly.
Mm,
That was the hardest part. I had the highlight, I had everything on it. And frankly, then the other thing is the editing process. Like,
mm-hmm.
I, I still go and, there's another bit of this, which I think is a blocker is, I'm trying to record my, newsletter as a kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And that has actually introduced a heavy extra load on my time
I
to
can't
do.
even imagine.
It's
Yeah,
like another
yeah.
5 or 6 hours,
Oh
at the
wow.
moment,
Okay.
because I'm still getting the hang of the editing
Yeah.
and everything. But, yeah.
Okay. So what I was hinting at
Mm,
or pushing towards is that what I experience in myself and actively try to fight against is this hard to release something that
mhm.
I don't think is perfect.
The perfect, yeah, exactly.
And
Mm,
but I mean it's all about self-management.
mhm,
If I say that, okay, I need to this Friday cadence, I'm sending out a very different post every
mhm,
Friday. It's more about an update and it's a bit more like a traditional blog. It's a bit
mhm,
more personal. It helps me that I need to ship something on Friday, and I never stayed up till 2 a.m. or anything
mhm,
to finish that, fortunately. And I start to collect stuff into it during the week, but
mhm.
that's a good cadence. And the point I'm getting at is that time boxing it, saying that
Yeah.
okay, I have 2 hours to write this
Mhm,
article, write something on this topic. This is the good way of
mhm.
saying it, because it's not going to be the article I had in mind. It's not going to be this ideal,
Yeah.
definitive, cornerstone, foundational blog post that's going to be, printed out
Mhm,
and put in management books and everything. It's going to be a imperfect reflection of my thoughts on the
mhm.
topic. But this is fine because shipping something 80% is much better than ruminating on a
Yeah.
single topic for weeks and fine tuning it in. And there was another good point I think in one of your articles is to share early, and
Yeah.
yeah, the IKEA effect article.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like that one, and
Mhm,
then we can talk a bit about that also if you want. Although we are getting almost to 1 hour at this point, that share
yeah.
early to in order to get the feedback.
Mhm,
Because when I'm working on something, I'm alone. I'm building up
mhm,
this echo chamber in my head, and if I don't have any
mhm.
feedback, if I don't release it, then it's not gonna be as good quality, counterintuitively as it could be with an early share and
Yeah,
a shorter feedback loop.
I guess we all, us perfectionists, and everyone has
Yeah.
some level of it, but that sharing, that share at 20%, I mean, share at 20% done as a guideline for inside an organization. I
Hmm.
think on
Yeah,
post
obviously
like
not for a
this,
blog post,
aim for
probably. Yeah,
80%. I think the
yeah,
Pareto
yeah,
principle.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what helps is setting this strong time box. Like you asked about my process. So part of my process is that I think it was coming from Hemingway, but probably others also, is to separate writing and editing very strongly.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing. Like
Mhm,
my first version is a big rambling. I have a tendency to create structure everywhere, but
mm,
I consciously avoid this tendency and just write my random thoughts. And then I put it aside
mhm.
and I come back the day after and do the editing. That's one of the things that's helpful. And the other one is this time boxing
Mhm.
to setting the series and just ship whatever shape it is. I'm not happy with, and this one was actually an exception because in the original version, I have 38 tips or something like this. And that
Yeah.
was just a weird artificial number. And I was like, okay, I have a lot of ideas. Like, let's make it to 50. And usually it's a very
Mhm.
bad idea to do it like this, because what usually you want to do during editing,
Mhm.
you don't want to write anything at editing. You just want to cut out stuff and
Yeah.
make it shorter and more concise and everything. So yeah, it was
I think it
a
works
bit of a
better
back
with
and forth.
50, and there's not too many of those 50 that I would cut. So, well, I don't
Yeah,
know if I would cut any of them, frankly. I think it's
yeah,
that's why I say
yeah. Thanks.
it's
I
a
mean,
definitive article.
thanks. I ended up
Mm.
keeping my principle of cutting during editing. I had more than 50 before I went into
Oh,
editing,
okay.
so I could cut out a few. But
Yeah.
I almost had a version ready to ship at
Mm.
38, and then I was like, okay, let's double down on
Mm.
this and make it a nice
So
round
you
number.
mentioned time boxing. It's funny. I mean, obviously, I wrote recently an article about time boxing, and it's the
Yeah,
as
yeah,
the project delivery superpower. And I agree with you. In fact, that's probably where
yeah.
I let my time bleed a lot. But funny anecdote, my brother texted me over the weekend saying, "Well, your newsletter is being read in our home because I just heard my wife say to our son that he has a time box to tidy his bedroom."
Nice.
So,
Okay, but do you think it works? Like, if I have a time box to my daughters, I'm not sure they're gonna spend it on tidying the room. They will just say at the end of the hour that, okay, I'm done, time is up, and
I don't know,
the
but
room is a mess.
that's the eternal parenting challenge. But
Yeah.
I've seen and I have a friend Tim who's applied a lot of agile ways of working with his relationship with his wife. And
Okay.
they actually have they have a lot of these kind of like agile planning principles applied to their life. So I mean, it can work.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You need
I
to have
mean,
everyone on board.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, obviously, definitely, it shouldn't be like
Yeah.
I'm telling you how we're gonna do stuff in this
Mhm.
house going forward. It should be a common agreement. Yeah, and also another big
Mm.
topic that maybe we can get into another day is the relationship or the similarity between parenting and managing people.
Oh yeah, yeah. We should talk
With
about
all due
that.
respect, that there are lot of
Yeah.
things.
Well, I think we're coming up to almost the hour, but I do think it's
Yeah.
worth talking about like the geeky aspect of our week.
Oh
Um,
yeah, we can totally do it
I,
because I had if you remember on the Friday, I was writing about moving home the analytics
mhm,
part of my site, and I'm running this experiment since a week where I have the two metric system running
mhm,
parallel. I have some discrepancies between them that I didn't. That's not my point. My point is that after sending out the Friday newsletter, I realized that my home instance is down. Like I couldn't get Docker starting with the where we sing, and I had a weird error message. Like, huge disclaimer: I'm not familiar at all with Docker. Like,
mhm,
I have no idea what I'm doing. This classic dog typing
mhm,
on the keyboard kind of stuff. I have some familiarity with the concepts and everything,
mhm,
but what seemed very weird is that I had some kind of networking related error
mhm.
message, like Umami couldn't bind to the 3000 port
Yeah.
on a specific IP address. And that IP address had nothing to do with the instance that I was
Mhm,
working on.
mhm,
So I'm not going to get into the details because it was a huge red herring. That was totally not but I tried everything. Like I have an internal DNS system. I thought that's where the problem is. I tried all kind of stuff, and then it turned out to be a syntax error in the Docker Compose file. Like I set up the environment variables in a .env
mhm,
file in
mhm, mhm,
my home folder, so I can separate sensitive information
mhm,
from the Compose file. And I called this environment file in every Docker image container,
mhm,
which apparently is not the way to do things because it silently dies. So once I removed the way I found this, and I think this can have a point outside of tinkering also, is that I took the default install. Like
mhm,
I just started from scratch,
mhm,
took the default install that was working, and line by line I was adapting my
mhm.
changes. And unfortunately, it was on the very top because once I
Yeah.
added this environment thing, the default install broke. So my point and why I think this home labbing thing is very valuable for
Mhm.
engineering managers or leaders or whoever, is that it's helping those
Yeah.
debugging and discovery skills that are very useful.
Mhm.
Like during an incident,
Mhm.
this is managing and resolving an
Mhm.
incident is not about technical knowledge as much as having the good skills and
Mhm.
strategy about where to look
Mhm.
and how, step back and say, okay, what is really the error
Mhm.
symptom? How can I
Yeah.
reproduce that? Like this kind of techniques. And the other part is communication, but that was not very
Yeah.
relevant now.
But I do think like these are skill sets that are home labbing teaches you those skill sets in a kind of a safe place. So obviously there's moments when if you're if I mean I host everything at home,
Yeah,
and if it's
I
down, it's extremely
it's
stressful.
admirable and scareful at the same time. like,
Well,
like wow.
we should back out a little bit. I would love for you to share with maybe listeners who haven't followed some of your journey. How did you end up doing this home labbing thing, Peter?
Oh yeah, that's a good story because it was totally by accident. I
Mm,
have a 2011 Mac Mini that I only used for media storage and it has a backup of all my photos and
mhm,
this random
mhm,
stuff. And one morning, the hard drive just died in it. It had this weird. I don't know if you saw those. I don't know, like 8 years ago, they were popular when SSDs were super expensive. They had these hybrid drives that were basically hard drives, but they had
oh yeah,
like 64 gigabyte of SSD in them. So the idea was that frequent access files could be in the SSD part, and
mhm,
it's a good idea, but fortunately, it became obsolete because SSDs got cheap. So I had this kind of drive. I don't know if that was the complexity that killed it, or it was just at the end of its life. But I had a Mac Mini without a hard drive. So what do I do? Like I just buy an
mhm,
SSD and have it with Mac, or I just play. And then I figured, okay, it's a good opportunity to get some home labbing, and I was reading up some stuff. I learned about Proxmox, which
mhm,
is a great hypervisor. I think I knew this word a month ago, and it was just
mhm,
amazing. Like, I mean, I'm sharing obvious stuff, but this was all new to me. Like
mhm,
when a child goes to a candy store, like I can do like I take a virtual machine, I can attach it to an ISO image
mhm,
and just boot up whatever operating system, whatever I like, tinker with it,
mhm,
and there was a good exercise when one of my instances I needed to increase the storage
mhm.
size, and I did it in Proxmox and I didn't see the result in the
Yeah,
virtual machine. It's a classic rookie mistake.
yeah,
But if you think about the concept,
mhm,
what I
mhm,
did is that I basically, if you have a hard drive,
mhm,
you add the platter.
mhm,
That's not going to change anything on the file system. So
mhm,
I need to go in and I did the partitions and
mhm,
everything, and it was really hard to do it from the command line.
mhm.
So finally, there are these system rescue ISO images
Yeah,
that I just attach it, boot it, and there is gparted and
super easy.
everything
Yeah,
visual, super
mhm,
easy, and it's just so logical, and it has this safety of virtualization.
mhm,
Like if I screw things up, I can just start again. I have daily backups
mhm.
now, so I could even just restore a earlier snapshot. Maybe that's what I should have done with the
Yeah,
analytics stuff. Just 'cause the other red herring
yeah,
was that Umami got an update, and actually what broke the whole system is that the update restarted the
mhm.
whole, rebuild the containers, and that's when the syntax error came out.
Do you have everything in Git yet?
I do. I actually have two big Docker instances
Mhm,
because I separate the whole media consumption part and the whole, I don't know, self-hosting
mhm.
part, and the second part is in GitHub
Yeah,
already. I think it's even public.
you have to be careful with that one.
I know. I separated stuff outside, and the other amazement area was about the Cloudflare tunneling.
Oh
That
yeah.
technology is so cool. Like I last time I was playing with this was I think 20 years
Mhm,
ago when I had an old PC, and I remember installing Gentoo Linux on it
mhm,
so I can compile my own kernel with the GCC
mhm,
optimized for the actual process and everything. And that's when I was playing with port forwarding and everything.
mhm,
So to learn that there are so much easier ways to do it today. Just install a little daemon
Yeah.
that builds a tunnel to Cloudflare, and Cloudflare takes care of everything. It's magic.
Yeah, Cloudflare, because for the longest time I had I mean, here in France, my internet service provider actually gives me a fixed IP.
Okay,
Uh,
lucky you.
it changed once in 6 years, no, more than 6 years, like nearly 10 years. It changed when I moved house as well.
Mm,
But essentially it's a static IP. And I think they changed it because they did a network upgrade and
mm,
they added like some other IPv6 or whatever to the network. I can't
yeah.
remember exactly, but um, so what I was doing was actually in the DNS putting my public IP of my internet, and
Yeah, that's what I used to do. Yeah.
yeah, I really
I
don't like
used to
that.
have to pay like, I don't know, $3 for per month
Hmm.
to have a fixed IP, and I paid for it. No, actually, I said lucky you first, but let me walk back. Unlucky you, because it was an easy way to do
Hmm.
it. Like, if you have a fixed IP, you take a lot of stuff for granted, and you don't go down into this dynamic DNS. I don't know how is it called, but there are some things that you can, just ping
Hmm.
and say, okay, this is my IP now, and then your DNS
Oh yeah,
record changes
yeah,
accordingly.
yeah. So I had all that set up, and then I had my router at one point was
Yeah.
um, had a script that talked to Cloudflare to update my DNS, and it
Hmm.
would be polling to see if my public IP had changed, and then it would dynamically up. So that was my hack.
Yeah.
Whenever my ISP changed my public IP, which took a lot of things down, I then wrote a script that like pulled and what my public IP was, and then updated it in Cloudflare. Updated it in my DNS settings. But
Yeah.
then moving to Cloudflare changed that. The only thing that I don't like about Cloudflare is they terminate SSL. In order to do what they need to do, they terminate SSL on their side, and then
Okay.
they establish SSL back to my server, which means that they are a man in the middle,
Oh yeah, they are.
and
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
see everything. But I choose that compromise today in a sense that they do so much for me and they do a lot of it for free, though I do pay for the Argo tunnel from my website now,
Okay.
which kind of gives you a kind of more globally load balanced accessing to it. But I think it's worth it for what they do. And I, like, frankly, don't have a lot to hide of what I'm serving out to the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm only serving part of my network and infrastructure via Cloudflare. The rest is internal only, and then I need like a Tailscale,
Mm.
kind of like a overlay network I need to be part of my Tailscale overlay network or
Yeah. I need to
in
look
my
into that
home
also. That
network.
looks super cool also. But
It's
it's
just,
it's interesting what you're saying about Cloudflare, because that's my fear also, that they're almost in this area. They're becoming like Google
mhm,
with all this positive and negative stuff. Like, if you think about it, Google is the email provider of the world now. Like everyone, except for, I don't know, 10%. I
mhm,
don't care about that. But 90% of the people use Gmail for their emails. I I read horror stories about people getting logged out of their Gmail account and then losing everything.
mhm,
Like, if you are logged out of your Google account, that means that, I mean, even if an attacker takes care of your Google account, then it's even worse, because they can get access to everywhere. But even if it's just being logged out for some kind of weird activity that Google deems unbeneficial for them or
yeah,
whatever, it's, yeah, this reliance of these quasi monopolies, it's a bit scary. And I
mhm,
love what Cloudflare is doing. I love that it's providing for
mhm.
free, but arguably that's what Google is doing also, and it's much more apparent now where this could lead to.
Cloudflare is just in that sort of the phase of don't be evil, and they haven't got rid of
Yeah,
the slogan yet.
yeah,
They're
exactly,
being like
exactly.
still the benevolent on the internet, but maybe we'll see them try and monetize that. We'll see. It's part
I
of
mean,
the
don't
cycle.
misunderstand me. It's just a small
Mhm.
concern. It's not something I take action on, because I'm not this kind of hermit who goes outside of
But
society.
I think the important thing here is this is why of home labbing and this is why of
Yeah.
open source. I understand how it all works. I can move to my own setup. I can move to a different implementation of this. I could, and I know how to, basically, if I was to not have Cloudflare, I would probably run more of like a more extensive and more heavily configured varnish cache,
Mm,
and some kind of other proxy that's doing the image conversion into better formats.
mhm,
And I'd probably have like a more heavily configured Nginx that does
mhm.
more of the kind of clever stuff that Cloudflare. You can do all of what Cloudflare does yourself. Um, so I think like being able to understand it is really important. If you delegate the responsibility to a platform and you don't understand what they're doing for you, then that's a real danger. That's why I love
I think that's
home labbing.
that's one of the things. The other thing I think is that ultimately, at the end of the day, here you own the data.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you own your domain name, you own the content,
Mm-hmm.
you can change it anytime. If you think about Google, my Gmail address, I don't own that. I don't have the Gmail domain. I'm not using my specific
Mm-hmm.
domain for email. So I cannot just take it and self-host it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it would be a big work for you to take everything to outside of Cloudflare, but it's totally doable.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, it's you own the data, and I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, I think lots more to explore in this
Yeah,
dimension.
tell me also a home labbing story of yours from this week.
Oh, well, this week I didn't have much time, but I've been hearing really good things about a new, it's probably not that new, but a tool called Homepage for basically
Oh, I'm using it. I love
having,
it.
yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've
it's great.
been using Heimdall and I've kind of like, I
Oh
can,
no, homepage is better. Yeah, sorry,
I,
I'm 1 week ahead of you on this.
well, I was using, I can't remember what I was using before Heimdall, but Heimdall came along and it was great. But what I loved about Homepage, and so I've got it, the first bit of it working. What I like about it is that I can configure the labels on my Docker containers, and it
Mhm.
dynamically is generating the dashboard from it. So, because I already had
I didn't go that deep yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
but I know what you're talking
it's
about. Yeah, it's
basically
pretty cool.
infrastructure as code. So
Mhm.
like basically all my services, like um, everything that I expose is infrastructure as code. So it's if I add a new service, I just add labels to the Docker image, and my proxy is picking it up and deciding: do I
Mm.
expose this? How do I expose this to the internet? Do I put my single sign-on auth in front of it or not?
Ah,
And
yeah, that's really cool.
then Homepages works in the same way, so I can have all the labels and say, for this one, this is the URL, this is the widget, here's the API key for the widget, and then Homepages generate. So big fan of it. I've only
Yeah,
got two things. It was just a POC that I did, but over the next, I guess, week, I'll probably be putting some config on that so that
yeah.
it's dynamic.
For me, it seems like a good compromise between, I don't know, between nothing and Grafana.
Hmm.
Like I really don't want to go down the Grafana rabbit hole because I've been tempted to have a Prometheus install somewhere, collect
Uh,
all the really down to detail magic, has this perfect dashboard with all the limitations of homepage, because there are a lot of
mm,
limitations. Essentially, it's a glorified bookmark manager
yeah.
with some widget. Uh, the value you get is that limitation, just like with time
Mm,
boxing,
mm,
the limitation is the value. This is that allows you to contain your creativity
mm,
in a
yeah.
fixed limits.
Yeah. I mean, I still have my own monitoring inside and outside that does a kind of like the one aspect of what you were saying with Grafana or whatever, but longer term, I think if I move to more of like a Kubernetes setup, which I've resisted. In fact, I was
I
in
read
it.
a good article that you shouldn't do
Yeah, I think that's when
that.
it's another level of. I did run Kubernetes for a bit, but I backed out of it
Yeah.
because I wanted more simplicity. But the moment when I probably moved to kind of like still basically like a fully vertically integrated server storage, compute, everything in one. But
Hmm.
when I move to multiple compute nodes, I'll probably then move to Kubernetes and um, yeah, but so
Yeah.
at that stage, I'll probably move to the full observability stack.
Good luck.
But for now, I use
Yeah, I mean, it's all
yeah,
about the top 5 priorities,
exactly. Yeah,
and time management. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't appreciate or don't realize that there is not just the inherent outcomes of these
Mhm,
exercises, like a more robust or more scalable network or whatever, is the learning aspect also.
mhm.
Like I'm not playing with Docker and homepage to have the perfect home lab set up. I'm also playing with it to learn about this because it's a very interesting technology.
Yeah. Um, well, there's an endless list of things that you can do in these.
I know, it's very tempting. All
Yeah,
this also awesome self-hosted
yeah.
page. I don't know if you know about
Oh,
it
I
with
know
all
it.
this. Oh yeah, okay.
I started going through the podcast section of it a few weeks ago. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I have like I'm just lost thoughts. I'm looking with open eyes around the house what I could put in Docker. Like the next idea is that I have all my paper documents
Mm,
scanned and OCR in an iCloud folder because
mhm,
strangely or unstrangely, I don't know. macOS Finder is pretty good in indexing and
mhm,
finding like doing full text search and this worked okay for
mhm,
my purpose. I just open a Finder, I type in, I don't know, rental lease, and
mhm,
I get the rental lease agreement. But I know that there are these paperless
mhm.
NGX, or I don't know, there's
Yeah,
some,
paperless
ve-
NG. Yeah.
yeah, there are some very good solutions for
Mm.
this. So that's my next
Well,
step.
I'll let you hear how that goes because that's definitely actually it's on the backlog of my idea list for the home lab.
Yeah,
So looking forward to hearing it. Well, I
yeah,
think
oh,
we're
sure.
hitting the kind of like the time box for
Definitely.
our
Yeah, I
chat
think,
as well. But
yeah.
I could spend like 2 hours just talking about home
Yeah,
labbing.
this was fun. Let's, yeah. Let's say our goodbyes and then align on the technicalities
Yeah.
what we do with this recording.
Yeah, but for folks who are listening, really appreciate it. Give us some feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Like the biggest part of the learning process or biggest value is receiving feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, over and
Cool.
out on the recording.
All right. See you all.